All right, so welcome to Angels Don't Lie. I'm your host, Jeannie Street, and tonight we have Hamilton Brower and Brower. Wait, our first Brower. Okay, I got it right. That's a really bad thing that I didn't put that note in front of me. I just call him Ham. And Ham and I, our paths crossed. I don't know if it was like 2 years ago, but I had heard about you. You were legendary. And so I had heard about you and seen you around town and obviously at our favorite eating spots because I would run into him all over the place. And then I had the honor of meeting him at a group reading at a friend's house. And she actually finally introduced us. And so the rest is history. Hamilton has a really amazing story. So I'm going to let him introduce himself and tell you guys about who he is and what he does. And I'll jump in from time to time just to ask some questions, but Ham?
Or keep me focused.
That too. So people inside the Zoom can ask questions. You can pop them in the chat. I'll read them to Ham if something comes up during. You could always raise your hand and we'll make sure that we stop and pause and you get that. People on Facebook that you're watching, unfortunately we can't go back and forth and get your post, but we will go back in later on and we'll see them and we'll answer you. And yeah, beautiful.
That's
Take
so
it away,
exciting. I honestly am more honored than I could ever honestly begin to tell you that you invited me because of what it means to me and because of what I'm going to share tonight. Jeannie asked me, I don't know, it was a month and a half or 2 months ago, we got into a conversation about the convergence that's kind of going on right now, the way, we both are viewing it. And I was telling her my thoughts that I see it as kind of a sort of a convergence of those in service to self versus those in service to others. And that like everything that's going on right now is kind of, you can really focus on that and see who's acting and behaving in a selfish way or who's more selfless. And so anyway, through that conversation, she had said to me, I would love for you to speak on your story in kind of how you crafted an illuminated life and maybe focus on part of the conversation we had was I am that I am, that statement. And I loved that. At first I kind of went, what? And I thought like, how am I going to put those things together? And it's baffling to me how I didn't see it clearer when she first said it. Because that statement alone, I am that I am, is, I think a lot of you have probably explored that and analyzed the essence of it yourselves. But it's so interesting because ultimately what it says to me is that we're illuminating the divine within ourselves by saying I am that I am, and we're recognizing it in others and honoring it in others. And that is part of why I am so honored that Jeannie invited me to talk to everybody tonight and share my story, because by doing that, she recognized the divine in me and honored me. And that touched me so deeply that I was surprised myself. So spoiler alert, however you say that, I recognize that it's not about me either. It's about we. It's about all of us. So I thought maybe I would change the theme tonight to we are that we are. Because this is really, it's all of us. All of us have this spark of the divine within us. All of us are worthy and important enough to share our stories. And I love story sharing. I've been a storyteller since I was a little kid, made up a lot of stuff too, but I've become a lot more authentic and accurate these days, which I hold in high regard. And I love when we share stories, because I feel like that's where we as human beings, as divine souls beings, really connect with each other. We honor each other by listening. We honor each other by sharing our experiences. And we kind of meet on this higher level, which is really cool. And to me, that's where the collective consciousness kind of like helps all of us raise our vibration. And I think it's how we grow ultimately. Certainly for me, I feel like when I listen to other people's stories, it creates a more complete story or picture of who the person is. The depth of their character, and it highlights their uniqueness. I was listening to a couple of the past podcasts that Jeannie has done with Angels Don't Lie. And one of them I just noticed is on here now, Billy Street. Mm-hmm. And Billy, I am just going to call you out right now. I loved your talk on racism. It was fabulous.
Thank you.
And
appreciate that. Thank you.
I honor you. Deep bow. You are really
and happy birthday, my friend.
Oh,
seriously?
It's her birthday. It's Billy's birthday.
Should we sing later? Maybe later.
Happy birthday, Billy.
Yes. Now that's something to celebrate.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Thank you so much.
But I recognize in starting to listen to some of the other people's stories that it shouldn't surprise me, but it did, how many similar words we all use to describe our paths and our journeys, and we talk about raising the vibration of the collective whole, and we talk about the divine within each other and within ourselves. And it's really fascinating to me that I have stepped into my story so much so that the law of attraction is taking place, I guess, right? And I'm bringing more of that same kind of vibe into my life, which is why I feel like I'm thriving. Mine is a story similar to so many others, from survivor to thriver. But I like to also recognize how different each one of our journeys has been. And that's the really cool part, I think, to listen to. So thank you, Jeannie, for creating such a safe space for people to share and people to listen, and for all of us to learn and grow. Storytime, living a life that matters, is something near and dear to my heart. So I've got to jump back a few years just to set up a little bit of where I came from in my survivor to thriver story. Back in the 80s, so in the mid 80s, I had just graduated college and I moved into New York City, and I became an ad guy. I was working in advertising and marketing, and I, to be honest, just loved what I was doing. At that point, I wanted a thriving community of really fun, smart, creative people. And that certainly was the place to be, New York City and in advertising. And it was really fun. So I felt like it was helping me to perfect my skill of like, I've got like little show and tell things. I'm such a visual person. But it helped me perfect my skill of like taking a product or a service and breaking it down to like its foundational core. This is a kaleidoscope, by the way, for people who can't see once it becomes a podcast. But, we break things down and we analyze them, and we do this like on a regular basis, not just ad people. I'm talking about all of us, really. And when we kind of reconstruct the item that we're talking to people about, we sell it to them, right? We kind of polish the edges and we refurbish it into a way that might be better digested by the people that we're talking to. So I'm not going to go through an example of selling you this kaleidoscope or a ballpoint pen or something, but it's really fun to do that. And that's what I like to do with stories as well. And so that's kind of what I've done with my story. And usually with a product, you get people to act at the end. I think with our stories, we can do that too, because we can have a call to action. We can reach into people's hearts. We can share something that we hope will make a difference. and will connect with other people on a visceral level that they can relate to and that might help them in their lives too. And that's what I'm hoping that we can all do tonight. It's interesting though, there was a little problem when I was in advertising, and that is that I tend to be a fairly emotional guy. Actually, I'm very comfortable with my emotions. So the problem with me in advertising was, as much as I loved it, there was a lot of fluff. You know, I worked on Burger King and Kodak and Nestle and then IKEA Home Furnishings and De Beers Diamonds and all these other companies that I was having a lot of fun doing, but I didn't really have an emotional connection to myself. I don't wear any jewelry. I don't have a lot of IKEA furnishings in my home, but I liked working with the company. So it was a lot of fluff, and I didn't want my life to be about fluff. I wanted it to have more substance, and I wanted it to have more meaning. I was looking for more meaning. But as we all know, that's not really the way our universe works. It's a world of dualities, you know, light and darkness, good versus evil. It doesn't always have to be versus things either. Like I said in the beginning, selfishness versus selflessness. I use the word versus again. It doesn't have to be versus. It's kind of a spectrum. And in order to appreciate light, we need to kind of experience a certain level of darkness, right? In order to really feel the gratitude for our health, I think it's important that we experience, whether it's ourselves or through other friends and everything, a certain level of grief and sorrow and hardship when someone has illness or dis-ease in their body. That's what I think really highlights and helps each one of us appreciate more the things that we want, the things that we really kind of want more of in life. So I wanted to be more real. I've always been 100% gullible in my life. I would believe anything anybody says. So my mind just thinks in truths. It became more discerning and attempting to achieve more accuracy. I didn't want to be judgmental. I wanted to be discerning. And there's a very finite, difference between those words, but I was seeking truth. And I could be so easily tripped up by non-truths because I, again, don't think that way naturally. So in that field of advertising, I could fall into a little bit of the salesmanship thing myself. I sometimes had a little bit of trouble figuring out what was the real truth. But I had a blast doing it. I was working with really cool people, like I said. And in 1988, I was really already, like after just a couple of years in the business, I don't do anything halfway. I went whole hog and I was really successful and having a good time. And in the, the late 80s, it was a really fun time to be in advertising and a really fun time to be a 25-year-old at that point. And it was the first time I was on my own after college and everything, and I thought I was really making my mark. The problem is I was probably having a little bit too much fun. I was operating a little bit more in that selfish phase of life. Working hard, playing hard, having a lot of fun, not thinking a whole lot about others, even though that's a recurring theme in my life too, that I put others first before myself generally. When I turned 26, so it was in 1989, again, my life was just getting started and I was having a blast. One blood test stole that spontaneity, that kind of feeling of freedom, that feeling of invincibility away from me. And I was diagnosed with HIV at the age of 26. And I don't know if any of you listening are familiar with that time, but in the 80s, that was a death sentence. And it truly was. About 90%, I don't have the exact statistic, but about 90% of people that were diagnosed with HIV back then didn't make it. And a lot of those people were my friends and people that I was surrounded by. And that was really hard on a human level, really hard as a 26-year-old, really hard as someone who just heard the diagnosis himself. How we all create stories in our heads and everything. And so I kind of believed, sadly, as an eternal optimist, I believed I could fight anything. But I listened to that negative chatter in my head a little bit too much. And I had a really hard time, obviously, as anybody would, with a diagnosis like that. But I was one of those people who wanted to present an external facade of happiness and health and not perfection. I wasn't a perfectionist. I've always strived for excellence, but I didn't want anyone to know. And so I hid it from everyone. I hid my diagnosis and I internalized it. And we all know that can't be a healthy thing. We know it's not. It creates stress, and stress creates inflammation and all of that bad stuff. But I was truly trying not to step on anyone else's toes. I didn't want to ruffle feathers. I had really pretty much just come out as a gay man, and very proudly. And then that, I always thought, wow, life should be so much easier. And it was as a kid up until that moment. It was like super easy for me until it wasn't. And I was trying to protect others close to me, my friends, and especially my family. My mom had just heard that she was diagnosed. She was just diagnosed with breast cancer about 3 months before I got my diagnosis. So I certainly didn't want to ruffle feathers and didn't want to create any more stress for her either. So I decided I was going to swallow hard and swallow my own diagnosis and just keep it from everybody, because I was certainly of the mindset that I could fight anything and I could get through it. And one book, it's not necessarily in chronological order, but I've got a bunch of books here I just am going to share because I think they're fun to share. It's a really great book called The Obstacle is the Way. I don't know if you all have ever heard of it, and by a guy named Ryan Holiday. And it's the subhead is The Timeless Art of Turning Trials into Triumph. And that's always been my school of thought, that we're thrown hardships and challenges in life not to fail and trip over them and die. We're thrown these hardships to see what we can do with it, to see what we're made of. And I really took that as a challenge and wanted to see what I could do. And I believed from day one, or at least I planted the seed in my head, from day one, this is not going to get me. That I'm not going to read any of the stories and articles about HIV and AIDS. I'm not going to read and look at the pictures of guys who had wasting syndrome and everything. That wasn't going to be my story. And so I kind of set about to forge ahead by myself with a few doctors. And that's part of what I think I did right. There's always, hindsight is a really beautiful thing, isn't it? We can look back and see what we did right and maybe what wasn't the best choice. And part of what I did right was I did partner with some doctors, and they were good doctors and wanted the best outcome for me. But I think I know I gave them a little bit too much responsibility. I didn't take enough of my own responsibility in the process. And so all of that part, then there we have that. That's the health part. In my career, because I didn't want it to be about fluff, and because I was going to forge ahead and become Superman and, and fight this thing on my own. With my career, I thought, okay, how can I make it work for me a little bit better? And I wanted a little more reality in my career. I started working at a great advertising agency at that point. It's called Deutsch Advertising, and Donnie Deutsch was leading it, and he had a partner, and they were looking for kind of a third partner to run the IKEA home furnishings account. And I was like, I'm going to be that guy. And what we did with the IKEA account was we broke down everything, like I said before, and we repackaged it to, talk to people. We decided, like, let's make it more like reality. Let's talk to people, not at them. Let's not preach at people. And so I started to really like that idea a lot more. And I was able to bring more of my personality and more of my beliefs to what I was doing in work. And we actually produced the first, we were looking for couples, to do different couple ads. And we were looking for 4 different couples. And we produced the first gay couple in a television ad. And we didn't make it like in your face and crazy, but it was a little bit of how I could get more of myself into my work. And that helped me feel a lot better. The fear that I was feeling crept in. Like I said before, the dualities, remember? There's a duality spectrum within fear. And there can be, on one side, there's paralysis and, inaction. And we can get so scared and isolated that we can't really do anything. We can't function. And at the other end of that spectrum, there is like the people who can transmute the energy of fear. You don't just get over fear. You're going to feel it. But you transmute that energy into positive action. And that was another piece. I started doing talks on that because I think I was trying to work through my own fears. And I was trying to rally, I think, attention from friends and that law of attraction group to pull in more people who could help me overcome my own fear, even though I wasn't really telling them where it stemmed from, which was sort of interesting for me to get around. I've always been a reader in like self-help kind of spiritual books and stuff. Jeannie and I talked about Many Lives, Many Masters. Brian Weiss, whom I absolutely loved. And that, little did I know, all of these books that I was reading were setting me up for my journey and helping me along the way to recognize my stepping stones on my own journey. One of the books that I read at a certain point that I just still to this day absolutely love, this guy, Erwin Raphael McNamara. I don't know if I'm saying his last name right. McManus, Methodist minister, preacher. And he wrote a book called The Last Arrow. And it is absolutely an incredible book for those of you who love to read. I'll just, on the back, it just says, when you come to the end of your days, you will not measure your life based on successes and failures. All those will eventually blur together into a single memory called life. What will give you solace in a life with nothing left undone, one that's been lived with relentless ambition, a heart on fire, and with no regrets. That lit a fire in me, big time. And this book is just so motivating and fabulous. I can't say enough about it. Again, did I make the best choices for myself? I'm not sure, but I'm still here. So I made some decent choices, but I poured myself into my work, into advertising. I was trying to become a better version of myself, but what I became is a workaholic. And I know a lot of this is typical, and I hope a lot of you can relate to some of these things that I'm unveiling. Again, that wasn't the best thing for me because that was incredibly stressful. Stress promotes inflammation in the body. And there's a common theme here. I don't know if you can tell what it is yet, but I was creating more of a chronic kind of inflammatory situation in my HIV-ridden body. My physical body was deteriorating, unfortunately. And this is now flash forward to 1995, the mid-90s. So it was about 7 years after I was diagnosed. And I thought, wait a minute, this can't be happening to me. I had meningitis. My T cells, which is an indicator of our immune system, was like way down, so low, almost non-existent, that's when you are no longer considered HIV, you are considered an AIDS patient. That's the marker. When it falls below, your immune system falls below a certain level. So I had full-blown AIDS at that point. Developed KS, which is Kaposi's sarcoma, the lesions that start to appear on your body, so that there is, not surprisingly, an external physical sign that like, something's wrong, alert, alert. And so I was being kind of pushed into a corner where, oh my God, I'm gonna have to start owning that part of my story, something that I really didn't wanna do. I still managed to hide it a little bit, but I was desperate at that point. And so I put myself into a protease inhibitor trial. That was the new class of drug medications at that time in 1995 that were being studied and that were supposedly going to be, the cure-all. They were going to turn HIV on its head, and that was the word on the street. So I was so desperate at that point, you guys. I was knowing exactly what the little bruises that started appearing on my body were. And I was scared out of my wits. There's a better way to say that, but it's a curse word, and I'm trying to make this a family program. I'm honoring the angels.
They're okay if you swear a little bit.
What?
I said they're okay if you swear a little bit.
I was scared shitless. I really was. And putting myself in that protease inhibitor trial wasn't just the act of signing myself up for, a research trial. That was the first little glimmer to me, which I didn't even really realize at the time. Again, hindsight, I can analyze it. That I was, even in that moment, I was attempting to put other people first. I thought, shit, if this is what's happening and I can't control this, if this is the path that my life is taking, I might as well go out doing something of value for others. I might as well put myself into this drug trial, which I was very wary of. But I thought, I knew I needed to do that. And I knew I needed the drug to work. Because sadly, at that point, the other medications that were available to me were not working. So I put my whole basket into that protease inhibitor trial. All roads then lead to June 16th of 1995, which will be forever ingrained in my memory. I was in the protease inhibitor trial at that point for 3 months. They had all the doctors who were involved and the researchers, and there were quite a number of them. It was being handled by the best of the best, the Aaron Diamond AIDS Research Institute, with Dr. David Ho, who was, Time Magazine's Man of the Year. That was a good thing, I guess, to be. And the end of the trial was coming up on June 20th. That was going to be the last day of the trial. And they had told all of us that they wanted us to report symptoms and side effects and everything, I hadn't felt anything. I wasn't feeling any different. And my health was continuing to kind of spiral. And so on June 16th, I had an appointment with my own doctors, my personal doctors, not doctors who were associated with the trial. And they knew what I was involved with and everything. And they looked at all my numbers, you know, like they do. You become a number. And looking at my lesions and all these things. And that was the day when pain point, they gave up on me. I knew what was happening. I didn't need for my doctors to say, you know what's happening to your physical body. It's dying. In their attempt to be compassionate, they said, if we were in your position, we would go home and get our affairs in order. You know, I get it now. That was their attempt to be compassionate. I didn't think I'd need this, but I have it. A tissue for those of you who won't see the visual. I didn't need to hear it from my doctors. I didn't need for them to give up on me. And what I heard was, go home and die. Because they said, go home. If we were you, we would go home and get our affairs in order. I told them that I already had my affairs in order. Remember, I strive for excellence, the do-gooder. But in that moment, I needed my doctors to do that. I needed them to act in a way that only they could, because they didn't know what they didn't know. And I took my life back in that moment. It was my first breaking point of the day. Little did I know there were going to be more. I slammed my hand down on the desk and I looked at them and said, no, doctor, that is not going to be my story. And I think in that moment, what I really did was I just stood up for myself. I stood up for life. I stood up for something greater than me. And I started believing in the value of this gift of life that we've been given. And I said, no, you're not going to take that away from me. And you're not going to plant that in my head either. I'm not listening to you anymore. And I took my life back. My pain point, as Jeannie has helped me with, and I've got to say the Angels Don't Lie community has helped me with in looking at some of what you all have spoken about. My pain point that I'm now able to label, that I'm now able to recognize, was betrayal, trust, abandonment. You know, I mean, I felt just left alone. Talk about isolated by the very people that I had put my trust in. And in that moment, I realized too that I had put my trust not in the wrong people, but I had given all of my power away because I hadn't stepped into it myself. And that's like a big message that I want to make sure everybody takes away tonight. It's our life. We're the ones who have to own it. We're the ones who get to step into it fully and completely. So I dug deep and remembered that it's the spark of the divine that's in every single one of us, and that we all have more control over our own destinies. I think if we shift our mindset into a more positive, loving mindset of greatness and infinite ability, and not give our abilities and our powers away to others. And so I finally stopped fighting the separateness of me in this physical world, you know, selfish, I was working out at the gym like crazy. So I created this facade. I was this little bodybuilder that nobody would believe was sick and dying, because I created this facade of health, and, everybody wanted to be me. And I was carrying around inside my head, like, you have no idea. You don't want to be me. I'm living a lie, I realized at that point, because I wasn't being truthful to everyone else. And what I realized was that I really wasn't being truthful to moi. I was hiding it from myself. So I opened up. I connected with something greater than myself, with something deeper inside myself, that I started opening up to myself. And I think we all need to start doing that with ourselves, right? We need to start loving ourselves before we can truly love another. Well, I needed to open up to the divine. I needed to open up to something greater in myself, to start loving myself for exactly who I was, exactly how I was, before I could start sharing that with other people. Obviously, I needed to get it through my own head first. And I realized I was swimming against the current all that time, and I didn't want to swim against the current anymore. I was tired. I was tired of hiding. I was tired of not owning my own story, and it was really hard work. So I released all that was comfortable and predictable for me, my attachment to the money I was making and how good I was in advertising and how great I was looking on the outside. Whoopee-doo. I was missing it, and I leapt. I leapt off the cliff, and I trusted in something that I hadn't trusted in for my whole life. Trusted in myself. Trusted in myself as a divine being, as a child of God, as a child of the universe, of all that is, of the source, whatever you want to label it. I try not to label things too much. I don't know why. So on my way home from the doctor's office that day, where they gave up on me, I decided to stop into Grace Church, which is on 10th Street and Broadway. And I didn't even know why. I was just drawn there. It represented I think a source of strength, a source of goodness, a source of truth. The gullible guy who's always seeking the truth. And I remembered as a kid loving going to church. I mean, I didn't necessarily listen to everything that was being said, but I had fun there. And it was a group of like-minded people who were a family and who connected with each other and who were soul sisters and brothers, who honored each other, who honored life, who honored love, who honored family. All the things, the values that were so important to me and that I didn't forget along the way, but I think I managed to let slip away a little bit. And I broke. I let it go. I let go control because I was so freaking tired. I gave it up completely. And I didn't know who or what I was giving it up to, but I gave it up to God, to the universe, to the source. And I made a contract. I made a contract with tears streaming down my face and snot streaming out of my nose. And I was a mess, and it was beautiful. It was absolutely one of the most beautiful moments of this entire life, truly. It's a moment that I would never trade in. I would never trade in any second of my story, but especially that moment. And my contract went a little something like this. Remember, I had just been told to go home and die. So I felt like I needed to be honest enough and honor a little piece of that. And I said, okay, God, take me now. Get it over with if that is for the greater good of humanity. If that is the path that I'm supposed to be walking and that I'm supposed to show strength and courage, take me now. Don't make me suffer anymore. I don't want to experience the fear. I don't want to walk that path of fear any longer. But there was a big but in my contract. What a waste that would be. What a waste of a life that I don't think I've connected to enough yet. What a waste of this physical shell that I believe is just a shell. If this physical life of Ham Brower is just going to be snuffed out because maybe I didn't do everything perfectly or whatever the greater good would be for that. So the big but was, use me. I'm surrendering. First time. It's hard the first time you're saying these words publicly. But I'm not shy. I'm proud to say them. Use me. Use this life in any way you see fit that would be for a bigger calling, and give me the health and the strength and the energy to go out into the world and be the light in the darkness so that others don't have to walk the fear that I'm walking. That was my contract. I thought it was pretty simple. But I couldn't believe how difficult it was to get to. And I was pretty proud of myself for getting there. And on my way out of the church, because I pretty much, I'll flash forward, I'm aware of the time. On my way out of the church, I turned around and I had to have a little bit of drama. I pointed up at the cross and I said, but again, but please give me a sign and give me a clue as to what the hell that means. Become the light. What did I even just commit to? I don't even know. Give me a clue, give me a sign, and don't make it a butterfly or a dove flying by so that I'm like, oh, is that my sign? I think that's my sign. No, I want it to be a piano hitting me over the head. And I literally said those words out loud. I closed the door and I walked home. Be careful what you wish for. You know, I think when we put it out there like that, like Greg Braden, I read a really good Greg Braden book, The Lost Power of Prayer. And it was all about feeling the feeling behind the thing that you want, right? Feel the feeling behind that thing that you desire, and as if you have it already. And when you feel that feeling and really feel what it would feel like to have that energy and the health and the strength to go out and be the light so others don't have to live in darkness. And I felt it to the core. And put that out there into the universe from your heart chakra, not from your head. The longest road we're ever going to travel is from our head to our heart. I traveled that road that day, and it was long. It was hard. But did I ever get a sign 2 nights later? 2 nights later. The other date for me that lives in infamy for me, June 18th, 1995, I was kept awake. Literally kept awake, very clearly. And without going into all those details, don't worry, Jeannie. I'm getting there. I know. Without going into all those details, that would be a whole different story. But when I was kept awake, I experienced a near-death experience. I had a life review flash in front of my eyes. My body I lost some control of my limbs, and things were happening physically I won't go into the details, but I thought, oh my God, what have I done? That's part of the contract. Maybe I'm being taken now. I didn't say maybe. I thought I was being taken now. A life review is something that I think we can all relate to. We've heard before. I thought that was the beginning of death. And I wasn't afraid. I don't know where that came from, somewhere deep within me, but I just thought, wow, I guess I'm going to have a bigger impact by dying. And somehow I was at peace personally. The physical things that were happening to me, the opening up from my crown chakra to my toes, the whole thing that was happening, I think it was part of an ego death because a piece of me did die. But the bigger thing that happened was the peace that came from, I used to think it came from externally. It came from within me, I believe. I think it came from the God, the divine that is within each one of us. We just have to call on it. We have to invite it in. We have to allow it. We have to prepare the field. If you pray for rain, you have to prepare the field in order to receive it. I don't know if maybe just me reaching that breaking point, that surrender, and asking for help was preparing my field. But I sure got a heck of a ride for the next 2 nights. The energy that I felt swirling in me, the peace that came over me, the level of unconditional love is indescribable. I now know why people who have had near-death experiences and come back to tell the story have a lot of trouble explaining it. We don't have the vocabulary to begin to touch the level of love that I experienced in that moment. The moment was the 2 nights. It happened over a course of 2 nights. I then lived, the only way I can describe it is behind the veil for 4 weeks after that, on a vibrational level that I've now come to realize from doing work with Dr. Joe Dispenza and Greg Braden, that they're working on trying to get people to hold that level of brainwave activity, beta, theta brainwave activity for 2-3 hours. When I met them in November at a conference that I went to, which was another highlight of my life, especially because I didn't think I was going to last this long, I told them my story, and they were a little bit in disbelief that I was holding that level for 4 weeks. And I did. And I said, I was in a medical research trial and the whole thing. And the doctors were studying me because I felt the need to talk to my doctors. I needed to share what I knew, what I was downloading. It was just channeling through me. And I was talking and talking and talking and sharing with people because I didn't know, I guess, if I was still going to be here or if this was the beginning of the end. I didn't know. And I didn't care because I was somebody who was so connected with life and so in love with life and so wanting to make a difference in other people's lives that I wanted to be here so badly, worse than anything I could ever begin to imagine. But the doctors, again, they were who I was surrounded with, the researchers and doctors. They didn't believe me. And they thought that what I was talking about and things that I could do physically, the energy that was coming through my hands, I knew I was going to become a Reiki healer. I knew that there were certain things I was going to be doing because of the physical differences that I was experiencing. And I also knew that it wasn't just me and I wasn't special. I knew that we all have access to this. And truly, I didn't realize how much I needed it, but the ego death was a huge thing for me and really, really valuable. I felt incredibly blessed. I called my family minister, Episcopal minister from Pennsylvania, told him 2 minutes of the story. He got on a train and came right up because he said, I've only heard this story one other time by another congregant. He said, on the human side, and I love this that he said this, it was so real. On the human side, I'm jealous as hell that it happened to you. How did it happen to you? Do you know what you received? And I said, no. And he said, the grace of God. It's overwhelming. It's overwhelming to know, not that just it can happen to other people, that I experienced it. And I have such a need to try to communicate that to other people, that all we have to do is ask. He explained to me that the peace that I was trying to describe, that I couldn't touch, the love, the unconditional love, that was part of it, was the peace which passeth all understanding. He said, repeat those words, the peace which passeth all understanding. We're not meant to be able to understand it. We're not meant to be able to hold that level of divinity in these physical bodies that we have, these dense physical bodies. But what I really came to understand was a couple things. And I'm going to go quicker now because I'm noticing that I'm going to go over. The importance of stepping into our stories. When Jeannie asked me to do this, she said, do you have a website for your nonprofit organization? And I just gave part of it away. This is where my story goes. I know you all probably read a little bit about it. I'll get there really quickly in a second. But I said, no, I don't. And she helped me. She introduced me to a web designer that she's worked with, who I love, Lisa, thank you so much. And Colleen, who is helped me edit and do a little writing. And Colleen, like Jeannie, is a story whisperer. They helped me get my story out. And sorry for all the emotion. I shouldn't apologize. I'm not really sorry. I like the emotion. But it probably took a little bit away from getting to where I wanted to go in my story. But owning our own stories is so important. Part of my journey has been to recognize the importance of this physical shell of a body, the importance of loving ourselves from the inside out. We all have it so much backwards. I'm so worried about, like, what do I look like? And what do I look like when I cry and snot's running down into my beard? Get over it. I don't really care. It's something that I think we all connect to more when we show our truth, our humanness, our emotion, our divinity. And don't hide it. And part of my journey has been to honor the physical body. And I got involved with the Juice Plus company, which is nutrition, whole food nutrition. I got really into standing up for my own health and becoming a full participant. Finally, get it through your head, Hamilton. Don't give it away to the doctors just because they wear white coats and have a stethoscope. Like, really? They don't get it. They get what they know. I'm not putting doctors down at all. I have a wonderful team now who, they all know when I come into their office that I'm going to interview them and I'm going to be their partner. And that's what we all have to do. We all have to stand up for our health and stand up for our own stories and stand up for ourselves, like Billy was saying in her talk a month ago. Become the best versions of ourselves that we can possibly become by honoring ourselves and by honoring the divinity in each other. And so my path is just kind of, it's not focused at all on on the physical body, but it's recognizing that the physical, mind, body, and spirit is so important to balance. Because without that balance, without all three equal parts, like we fall apart pretty quickly, or we can. And it's really important to have all three involved. So stepping into my story became like a piece of my journey when I went into a Brene Brown course. I won't go into the course. It was a leadership course and Call to Courage. And Brene says, I love it. It's her quote that I pulled out because I wanted to make sure I got it right. She says, you know, when we have the courage to walk into our story and own it, we get to write the ending. And so I realized that connecting to my story, owning it, putting aside my own shame and stigma and worrying about what other people are going to think, I don't care anymore. I'm living fearlessly now. I'm connected to something much higher. I don't have to worry about what anybody's going to think or what they feel like I look like. The other little piece, which people on the Zoom are going to be able to see maybe, but I'll read it to you so that the people who are listening can know it. So when we have the courage to walk into our story and own it, we get to write the ending. And when we don't own our stories of failure, setbacks, and hurt, they own us. And that was another big breaking point for me. I realized I needed to step into it. And I started attending lectures and things instead of just reading great books. And I engaged more with my own life and my own journey. And a guy asked a really important question at the end of one of the Juice Plus lectures that I went to. And the question, it was about legacy. He was talking about legacy and what we want to leave behind when we're gone. And his question was, and this is a great question, I want to ask all of you, and nobody has to answer it right now. If you have an answer, then bravo and brava to you. His question was, how do you want to be remembered when you're gone? And I did this, I cried when I heard that question. And my best friend was sitting next to me and she looked at me and nudged me and she's like, isn't this great? And she said, sweetheart, what's wrong? Why are you crying? And I said, this is fabulous, but I don't have an answer and I want one. And in that moment, I realized that I had not looked beyond surviving. I was fighting to survive all those years. And even all those years later, after my calling, after the grace, my God, I had this huge moment. And it's because I hadn't chosen to step into it fully myself, into the calling. And I think this is part of why I'm so emotional tonight. This is the calling. I think this is all I'm meant to do. This is probably all we're all meant to do, is share our stories, share our experiences. Somebody else on the call, on the podcast, might hear something that helps them. And if it does, then I've done all that I'm here to do. That is what be the light in the darkness means. Hold the light of truth. Honor ourselves, honor each other, and step into our story to become the best version we can all be, because that's going to be the example that's going to help other people get there too. And the last thing I'm going to say, because I've completely gone off my outline, is what I did with that. How did I end up answering? And I took a couple days to answer the question, how do I want to be remembered when I'm gone? And my answer goes a little bit like this. And it's just that I wanted to be remembered as someone who stood up for something despite all the hardships that he faced, and managed to turn his survival into a thriving life, so that he could live a life of service to others, a heart-centered life of service, and a purposeful life that would make a difference in the lives of others. And when I looked for the answer of how I was going to do that, I knew what I had to do personally. I had to bring my circle closed. And I created a nonprofit organization to give everything that I do with Juice Plus Company, with Tower Gardens. I talk about health all the time, encouraging, inspiring people to stand up for their health, because without our health, we have nothing. We don't get to be here anymore if we don't honor our health and honor this as a temple. And I decided to give back and serve the underserved communities that no one is really talking to about how they can take better care of their physical bodies too, so that they have the best opportunity to thrive. And that's what I'm doing. And that's what I would like all of you to look at some point, if you can, if you feel like it. Just, I'm trying to build a community of like-minded people who want to help make a difference in the world. Stand Up For Health, .org is the website that Jeannie, thank God, Jeannie, made me do.
Not me, it's the angels.
It's what?
It was the angels. I'm just the vessel. You know, the message comes through and it's like, push them, push them, push them.
Exactly.
Billy knows, Susan knows. When the angels have something to say that's super important, a lot of our listeners know it's going to be that. So you did it. You followed. That's all. That's the miracle.
Yeah, I guess that's all any of us have to do. And why did I make it so difficult? But I don't really look at it that way. Like I said earlier, I wouldn't change a thing. People have asked me a lot before, if you could snap your fingers and be HIV negative, and go back, would you? And I said, no, I wouldn't consider it for a second, because that's how I got here. It gave me new eyes, a new heart to see things the way I wish I had seen earlier, but at least I'm getting it.
Wow.
So thanks everybody for listening, and sorry that I didn't allow enough time probably for much discussion.
You did awesome, but I really would like can you tell them a little bit about the Tower Garden that you're doing at the silo? Because I just love what you're doing there, and I think our listeners will like it too.
I would love to. So part of what I'm doing with Stand Up for Health is I am collaborating with another nonprofit, which is called The Silo at Hunt Hill Farm. And they're local here in New Milford, Connecticut, where I live. And I feel like an 8-year-old boy in a sandbox when I go there. I come to life. The people who are there, Alessandro and Danielle Pio-Bassan, who is the lovely young couple who run it, and they own the property. They are honoring the original legacy of Skitch and Ruth Henderson, who had the place. And they developed a cultural and arts center and a learning center. And they really celebrated everything to do with gardening and art, live arts and music and dance and cooking and health too. But when I told them about Stand Up for Health and what I was doing to support the underserved communities and provide them education and resources so that they could thrive, just like all of us
should.
And with food, right?
Yeah.
And they said, oh my goodness, we love that. Do you have a physical home for Stand Up for Health? And I said, no, I don't. And I said, they said, what's your dream? And I said, my dream is to create a Stand Up for Health and wellness sanctuary where it would bring in just the best people who are doing heart-centered, purpose-driven work to serve others and to honor others and build a community of like-minded people out of love and reverence and respect and honor for the gift that we've been given, life and health. And so they said, consider it done. And my mouth dropped open and I couldn't believe it. And so what I've started to do initially is what Jeannie is talking about. I'm starting the Connecticut's first vertical aeroponic tower community garden. And they're just these beautiful vertical towers that we are using in a lot of schools and everything to educate kids about the importance of good food choices and the importance of loving ourselves from the inside out, taking care of our insides so that we can all flourish on the outside in our lives. And we're using these towers as a physical symbol to educate kids about the future of agriculture, how we're going to feed the 2 billion more mouths that are supposedly going to be here by 2045. We're working sustainably to save land space and to use a lot less water. So these tower garden units are really fabulous, and they're supplying tremendous education, especially for kids, but for everybody. And right now we've got 7 tower gardens there, and I'm donating everything that I make, all the profits that I make. I know people think that I'm crazy because I talk about fruits, veggies, and berries all the time. And I'm not a pure vegetarian. I'm a plant-nourished body. So I am getting my, not just 10 servings a day, I'm getting about 50 servings of fruits, veggies, and berries in my body every day. And no, I don't walk around with a trough hanging around my neck. But that's the beauty of part of what I do with the Juice Plus company. It's whole food nutrition, and it's fabulous. But that's my mission, is to inspire healthy living among all people and give anybody who wants to get involved the opportunity to share the same thing I'm doing and work with me. And by all of us working together, anybody can thrive financially and physically themselves. And whatever I get goes right into Stand Up for Health and funds Stand Up for Health, as does my book that I wrote. I'm not going to push it, but I have to just say I did this. This is one of the things I did when I stood up and took my health back and responsibility for my life. It came out of my 6-year-old nephew, Pierce. It was hit and killed by a car back in 2001, and I wanted to honor his life. And the only way I could see really doing that is by writing a book. Hello, what was I thinking? It's a book of character traits and values, and I love doing it. It's called Magnificent Words to Live By. And it's just a book of really great words to know that explores the essence behind the words and leads people on a happier path of life.
Beautiful.
So all of what I'm doing, I'm donating to give back. And, you know, Jeannie, I don't think I told you the first day that I got my approval from the IRS to be a fully serving 501c3 nonprofit organization, I came home with the letter and my phone rang, and it was one of those weird rings, you know, not a normal ring. And it was a Facebook whatever friend, you know, who calls you through Messenger. And I usually just go, oh, and make it, you know, say a curse word. And it was a name that I recognized. And she's a woman from Kenya who's 22 years old, has been living with HIV. The stuff that gets me is amazing. Living with HIV since she was 14, she was raped by her uncle. And she started her own nonprofit in Kenya. And she has 60 girls, all younger than 18, who are HIV positive, who've been shunned by their villages, and they're living with her. She had nothing. She was shunned by her village. And all the girls were, you know, contracted HIV either through, she gave me quite the education, either through rape or genital mutilation, which I didn't really know much about myself. The phone rang, it was her. she'd been following me on Facebook and saw me talking about fruits and veggies and healthy living. And she reached out to me and said, can you help me? I'm trying to feed 60 girls. I need to know information. I need to know what you're doing. And I talk about another God moment. I literally hit my knees because I just said, who are you really? Like, why are you calling me now? I almost couldn't believe it. Within hours of receiving the letter, here was somebody reaching out to me. So I've got, who said I was never, as a gay man with HIV and AIDS, never going to have my own kids. I've now got 60. And I could not be more proud, could not feel any better about what I'm trying to do. And her group is called the Butterfly Project, because the girls come to her and they're not talking. They have no self-worth. They have nothing to their names, and they're basically like a caterpillar and a chrysalis. And she helps them thrive and come out as beautiful butterfly. It's amazing what this is going to do, connecting people. And all because I'm the fruit who's talking about fruits and vegetables.
You move me so much. Like, how God is working through you and the miracles, it's beyond. I thank you so much for your time and your willingness to share your story with us so openly. And I know it wasn't easy, so I respect you. And I know everybody watching and listening is also feeling just blessed to be a part of that journey with you. And guys, the proceeds from the show tonight are going to Stand Up for Health. If you want to donate, you can do so. And it's all going to go, as he said, he gives everything away. He just pours it back into the community, back into programs, and back into the children. Oh my gosh. Ridiculous. You are just unbelievable. In such a good way. In such a good way.
And like you said earlier, it's not me.
Mm.
It's something coming through me.
Right.
And I can name it. It's God. It's love. It's pure.
Absolutely. So hold on. I'm going to sign off for Facebook. Guys, thanks for watching and tuning in. And you can follow Hamilton as well. Do a little stalking and you'll see what I mean. And we'll see you guys later. And that way we can, if anybody has any questions now that's watching, if you wanted to ask Hamilton anything, now is your chance. Or comments. Everybody's quiet.
I would just say I didn't know quite what to expect this evening. I can also say that this wasn't it, but wow, I just wanted to say thank you for sharing your heart, because clearly you were coming from your heart when you were speaking today. And I'm looking forward to seeing all the amazing things that you do and the connections you make. And your story is incredible.
Yeah, I have to agree with Billy. You really touched my heart tonight. Thank you.
Oh, wow. Thank you all. Thank you for holding space. And
thank you, Jeannie, for connecting us with him. Yes.
I'm like so overwhelmed right now, honestly.
Yeah,
when God leads you to do something and then all of a sudden you just see the connections and things happening, you don't know what it's going to look like. And just that you watched Billy's talk and you listened to her and now you get to meet her and see her. And
it's all about connections and it's beautiful. And thank you again for seeing whatever you saw in me to invite me, even though you knew I was brand new at sharing and that it's raw. But that's
Are you kidding? You crushed this thing. You led the whole thing. I didn't even have to say a word.
It was beautiful.
Right? Like there was no, like I didn't have to ask any questions or anything. He just like went with it.
But I
Dude,
don't know.
seriously.
I could have timed it. I see my friend Atsine is on. And I am so loving her and what she's done. And my logo, she helped me with my logo, and she saw my honest, heartfelt reaction when she came up with my logo. I wish I could pull it up and show you guys, but you'll see it when you go to the website.
Yes.
She nailed it. And it.
I have a question. So you talked about not having fear and being fearless. But I would imagine, even though you're overall fearless, that there are moments where you have doubt or uncertainty, and are like, you know, kind of, what the hell am I doing? What the hell am I doing? Kind of feeling. In those moments, what pushes you through?
That's a great question, Billy. Wow. That's a great question. And you know what it is it goes back to my contract that I made in the church that day, that I knew what I was doing when I surrendered completely. I didn't understand what it was going to look like. I didn't understand if it was going to be a real possibility. But because it was, and because it became so clear to me in those 2 nights of what I experienced, I knew without question that I had devoted my life to a life of service, heart-centered service to others, not to me. And that drives me very easily through the fear. Like I said earlier, one of the talks I give is about fear. And it's called Feeling the Fear, Living a Life of Authenticity. And it's not that we lose fear, or that even when I say I live fearlessly, I feel it, but I allow myself to feel it wholly. And then I transmute that into action to propel me forward so that I can honor my part of the contract. Because the universe certainly did its job and even gave me the sign at the end. Wasn't as clear as I thought it was going to be, but a sign. So to be honest, like I'm one of those people, and I explore it quite a bit in my book. It's again a book of character traits and values, and there's several of the words that I explore. I take each letter of the alphabet and explore a different character trait or value with a 12-line Dr. Seuss-like rhyme and meter. And I was going to read you all a couple of the words, and then I didn't. But I'm a man of integrity. And I think when I said in the beginning of my talk that I'm a gullible person, I'm a man of my word. Like, I just don't understand. It's hard for me to process what's going on in the world right now, that convergence of service to self, which I think we all know who I'm talking about, and service to others. And I just couldn't feel like I'm in the right side at the right time. And I don't even see it any other way. So that's what drives me. And something that you said in your talk that really struck me was that, yeah, it's fine. We all need to honor who we are, honor our story, own our story. And you described yourself so beautifully. You said, you said it, and then another woman said it. You said, obviously, I'm a Black woman. It was so interesting to me when you said that. And I was listening to the podcast, so I couldn't see you. And I just thought, isn't it interesting? Because the real gem is on the inside. The facade is just a facade. This is just the excuse to house the good stuff. And that's the spark that's within each single one of us. Like the Black Lives Matter group has said so much, we bleed the same blood. And that hits me to the core. And I feel like I can just relate to so many different aspects of your story because, I'm a minority. I'm hated by some people if they find out who I am. For what? For living my life, for honoring my uniqueness, it's ridiculous. So I look right into other people, into the gem that's on the inside. And I don't look at the wrapping. I do. I see it, but I don't care. I want to know who you are. And when we break all of that other stuff away, I realize we're the same. We are the same. We are a spark from the same source. And that's what, I guess, plows me through the fear so that I have no fear about what's going to happen to me. I'm responsible and respectful, so I do wear a mask when I'm supposed to most of the time, because I'm responsible and respectful for other people. I want to walk the walk, and I talk the talk. I really want to walk the walk. And my path, every step I take, I feel like I'm illuminating the path for the others behind me who are still in the darkness. And I want them to come too. I want them to see the world the way I see it, to be able to, if they choose to. And so, I don't know, did that answer your question?
It did. Thank you. It did. Thank you.
Thanks for asking.
Oh my goodness. All right, my friend. Thank you all for tuning in and for hanging out tonight. And we'll see you guys next week. Hamilton, thank you again. Go visit his website. Telling you, you're going to love hanging out with Ham.
Thank you so much, Jeannie. I appreciate it.
All right.
And you know what you know?
Go ahead, Susie. Susan, it's your turn. Go ahead.
Because angels don't lie.
There you go.
That's right.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye, guys.
Thank you all so much.
When she smiles at